Admiral Jessica Hayes stood motionless before the Pentagon's quantum display, her weathered face illuminated by the holographic representation of Earth's orbital space. Behind her, the Joint Chiefs held their breath as 37 hegemonic warships materialized just beyond lunar orbit, their obsidian hulls drinking in the sunlight. "Right on schedule," Hayes murmured, checking her antique wristwatch. 6 months of preparation had led to this moment. The watch had been her father's, worn through 3 wars. She hoped she wouldn't need to wear it through another. The massive display flickered as the hegemony's transmission cut through every communication channel on Earth. Supreme Commander Vexthor's scaled face filled the screen, mandibles clicking in what intelligence suggested was a sign of anticipated triumph. "People of Earth," the alien's voice resonated through the war room's speakers. "Your primitive civilization has been deemed a threat to galactic stability. Surrender your military assets and submit to hegemonic rule, or face immediate extinction. You have 1 planetary rotation to comply." Hayes took a slow sip of her coffee, savoring the bitter taste. Around her, the command staff maintained their practiced calm. No panic, no rushed movements. Just the quiet hum of quantum computers and the soft breath of professionals who had rehearsed this moment hundreds of times. "Lieutenant Anderson," Hayes called out, her voice steady. "Please display Project Mirror." The holographic space transformed. Suddenly, every hegemonic ship was surrounded by detailed technical readouts, shield frequencies, weapon configurations, crew complements, and, most importantly, design flaws. 6 months of decoded transmissions and deep space surveillance, laid bare in pristine detail. "Open channel," Hayes ordered, setting down her coffee. "Let's return the courtesy." The screen split, showing both Vexthor and Hayes. The alien commander's secondary eyes widened, a tell intelligence had identified as surprise. "Supreme Commander Vexthor," Hayes began, allowing herself a small smile. "I'm Admiral Jessica Hayes, Earth Defense Force. I believe we should discuss the rather serious structural weakness in your flagship's port gravitational stabilizer. Fascinating design, really. 1 well-placed shot, and the entire ship would fold in on itself." Vexthor's mandibles topped mid-click. In the background of his transmission, his bridge crew began frantically checking systems. "Impossible," he hissed. "Your civilization barely has functional spaceflight." Hayes nodded to Lieutenant Anderson again. The display zoomed in on a particular section of the hegemonic flagship. Engineering schematics appeared, highlighting a critical junction where the gravitational stabilizer connected to the main power core. "Section 47 Beta," Hayes continued, her tone conversational. "I particularly enjoy how your engineers tried to compensate for the design flaw with a series of backup systems. Creative, but ultimately futile given the right frequency of electromagnetic pulse. Would you like me to demonstrate?" The alien commander's scales shifted color. Another tell. Fear. "This is your final chance to reconsider your actions, Commander," Hayes continued. "You wanted conflict. Well, you've certainly found it. But ask yourself, if we know this much about your ships, what else might we know? What else might we have prepared?" She leaned forward, her reflection ghosting across the quantum display. "You have 1 Earth hour to withdraw your forces and return to hegemonic space. After that, I cannot guarantee the safety of your fleet. And Commander, the next time you plan an invasion, you might want to use better encryption on your tactical databases." Hayes cut the transmission before Vexthor could respond. The war room remained silent, dozens of eyes fixed on the holographic fleet hanging above them. "Think they'll buy it?" General Martinez whispered from behind her. Hayes picked up her coffee again, studying the alien ships. "They don't need to buy it all. They just need to doubt enough to delay. Every hour they waste is another hour our deep space assets move into position." She checked her father's watch again. In 58 minutes, they'd find out if 6 months of preparation had been enough. If not, humanity would demonstrate exactly why they'd been practicing fighting wars for their entire history. Besides, Hayes added, allowing herself another small smile, we haven't even shown them our real surprises yet. Would you like me to continue with Part 2, or would you like any adjustments to Part 1? Lieutenant James Cooper hadn't meant to start a war. 6 months ago, he'd been running routine deep space scans from Luna Base's Quantum Observatory when he noticed the anomaly. A burst of encrypted data, microseconds long, hidden in the background radiation between Saturn's rings. You're going to want to see this, Dr. Sullivan, he called out, his voice echoing through the nearly empty facility. Dr. Emily Sullivan had been the only other person on duty that night. The quantum physicist had built half the observatory's detection systems herself, and she'd recognized the significance immediately. What followed was 72 sleepless hours of decryption, followed by the most important video conference of their lives. Now, watching Admiral Hayes face down the hegemonic fleet, Cooper allowed himself a moment of pride. Their discovery had given Earth a fighting chance. Status report. Sullivan's voice crackled through his earpiece, pulling him back to the present. She was 3 levels below, monitoring the quantum grid they'd spent months disguising as routine stellar observation equipment. Hegemonic ships maintaining position, Cooper reported, studying the holographic display. No sign they've detected the grid yet. Think they bought the Admiral's bluff. Sullivan's laugh was sharp and short. They're too busy scanning their own ships for the weaknesses we mentioned. Classic misdirection. Make them look where we want them to look. Cooper nodded, even though she couldn't see him. The real surprises were elsewhere. Like the quantum-locked missiles hidden in plain sight, disguised as space debris, or the fleet of automated drone ships sleeping in Mercury's shadow, waiting for the signal, every piece positioned with excruciating precision, guided by the very battle plans they'd stolen from the enemy. 6 months, he mused. Hard to believe we've kept this quiet for 6 months. Had to, Sullivan replied. The moment they realized we cracked their codes, the whole plan would have changed. Remember what the Admiral said. Cooper smiled. The best trap is the one they don't know they're walking into. His display pinged softly. One of the hegemonic ships was moving, adjusting its position slightly. Cooper's fingers flew across the haptic interface, adjusting the quantum grid's invisible web to compensate. They're getting nervous, Sullivan observed. 3 minutes until the Admiral's deadline. Want to bet on their response? No bet, Cooper said. They'll. A new alert cut him off. The hegemonic fleet was powering up their main weapons arrays. Well, Sullivan's voice was grimly satisfied. Looks like they've made their choice. Initiating Phase 2. Throughout the solar system, humanity's careful preparations began to bear fruit. Civilian ships suddenly revealed military-grade shields. Asteroid mining operations transformed into missile batteries. 1,000 small deceptions, each meaningless alone, combined to reshape the battlefield. Sending final confirmation to Earth Defense Command, Cooper announced, authorizing the codes that would activate their segment of the defensive grid. Dr. Sullivan, power readings are within expected parameters. Grid is hot and ready. Acknowledge. There was a pause. James, whatever happens next, it was an honor figuring this out with you. Cooper watched the countdown tick away on his display. In 30 seconds, they'd find out if their preparations had been enough. If the quantum grid would hold. If humanity's greatest gamble would pay off. The honor was mine, Emily, he replied softly. Though next time, maybe we scan for something less dramatic, like a nice, peaceful comet. Her laughter was interrupted by the final alert. Time was up. On his display, Cooper watched the hegemonic fleet begin their attack formation. They had no idea they were flying right into position, their movements predicted months ago by the very battle plans they thought were secure. Here we go, he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. Let's show them why you don't pick a fight with a species that turned warfare into a science. The quantum grid hummed to life, invisible strands of energy ready to spring humanity's first trap. Now they would see if 6 months of preparation could outmatch an empire's 1,000 years of military dominance. Colonel Michael Mad Dog Davidson watched the hegemonic fleet's formation with predatory satisfaction from his stealth carrier Silent Thunder, hidden deep within Saturn's rings. Ice particles drifted across his bridge's view screen, each one helping to mask his ship's thermal signature. 6 months of waiting in silent running mode was about to pay off. "All hands, battle stations," he whispered into the command interface. Throughout the massive carrier, crews moved with practiced precision. No klaxons, no raised voices, just the quiet efficiency of a crew that had drilled for this moment until it became muscle memory. "Sir," his XO, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Wells, reported, "Task Force Omega is in position. The hegemony's targeting systems are tracking their predicted attack vectors." Davidson allowed himself a grim smile. The aliens were so dependent on their tactical AI, they couldn't conceive of a battle plan it hadn't predicted. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength was their ability to think outside any box their enemies tried to put them in. "Launch ghost drones," he ordered. "Let's give them some shadows to chase." Across the solar system, other hidden task forces waited. The hegemony thought they were executing a perfect encirclement of Earth. Instead, they were spreading themselves thin, exactly as planned. The first wave of ghost drones emerged from Saturn's rings, their experimental quantum drives creating multiple sensor echoes. To the hegemonic fleet's eye, it would appear as if hundreds of ships were charging their position. "Enemy fleet is responding," Wells announced. "They're dividing their forces to intercept the ghost signatures, falling right into the trap grid." Davidson watched as the alien ships split into smaller groups, each pursuing what they thought were human attack squadrons. The real assault would come from a direction their tactical doctrine said was impossible. "Signal the Titan Gambit," he commanded. Time to show them why humans wrote the book on asymmetrical warfare. Deep within Titan's methane seas, electromagnetic pulse generators activated. The sudden burst of energy created a gravitational lens, bending space just enough to allow Davidson's real strike force to emerge from what appeared to be solid moon. "Strike force deployed," Wells reported, excitement creeping into her professional tone. "The hegemony's tactical AI is struggling to compute our emergence vectors. Their formation is breaking down." Davidson keyed his fleet-wide comm. "All ships, execute attack pattern Crazy Ivan. Let's give these aliens their first lesson in human ingenuity." His task force exploded into action. Ships appeared from gravitational shadow points the hegemony had deemed navigational impossible. The ghost drones' quantum echoes masked their real attack vectors. And most importantly, every move they made contradicted the tactical doctrine the aliens had based their entire strategy upon. "Sir," Wells called out, "enemy flagship is attempting to regroup their forces. They're realizing the ghost signatures are decoys." "Too late," Davidson grunted. "Spring the Venus Gambit." On his tactical display, he watched as dormant platforms around Venus suddenly activated, their gravitational tethers reaching out to snare the scattered hegemonic ships. The aliens had been so focused on Earth, they'd forgotten humans had an entire solar system to work with. "Enemy ships reporting critical system failures," Wells announced. "Their AI can't adapt to our randomized attack patterns. They're falling back to manual control." Davidson nodded. The hegemony's greatest weakness was their overdependence on predictive algorithms. Humanity had learned long ago that sometimes the best strategy was controlled chaos. "Launch the second wave," he ordered. "Let's show them what happens when they underestimate the species that turned unpredictability into an art form." As his forces engaged the scattered alien fleet, Davidson thought back to all the war games they'd run, all the scenarios they planned for. The hegemony thought they were dealing with a primitive species that had barely reached their solar system's edge. Instead, they'd awakened a giant that had spent its entire history preparing for moments exactly like this. "Sir," Wells reported with satisfaction, "the enemy fleet is in full retreat from Saturn space. Phase 1 of Operation Hornet's Nest is complete. Davidson allowed himself another smile. Good. Now let's show them why you never want to face humans when we've had time to prepare our battleground. Major Rachel Winters knew she was supposed to be scared. Her unit was trapped on Titan, outnumbered 10-1 by hegemonic ground forces, and standard military doctrine said they should be dead already. Instead, she was grinning. Status report on Project Minefield, she commanded, watching the alien dropships descend through Titan's thick orange atmosphere. Ready to initiate, Major, Sergeant Marcus Rodriguez replied from his position at the mining facility's converted control center. All maintenance bots have been reprogrammed according to specs. The methane lake is rigged. Winters nodded, studying the tactical display. The hegemony troops were landing exactly where predicted, their combat AI following textbook invasion protocols. Too bad humans had written their own books on warfare. They really think we're just hiding in here, she mused, waiting to be dug out like rats in a hole. The mining facility had been her idea. While other military installations prepared obvious defenses, she convinced Command to let her transform Titan's largest methane extraction plant into something entirely different. Now, as alien forces surrounded them, that preparation was about to pay off. First wave is on the ground, Rodriguez reported. They're deploying in standard assault formation. Let them get comfortable, Winters ordered. Wait for the second wave to commit. Through the facility's reinforced windows, she watched the hegemonic troops advance. Their powered armor was impressive, sealed against Titan's hostile environment, bristling with weapons that could reduce a human to atoms. They moved with machine-like precision, each step calculated by combat computers. Second wave touching down, Rodriguez announced. Third wave in high orbit, waiting for confirmation. Winters keyed her comm. All units, initiate Protocol Crazy Eddie. Time to show these aliens why humans are the galaxy's apex predators. The trap was sprung in stages, each designed to maximize chaos and confusion. First, the reprogrammed maintenance bots emerged, not as weapons, but as distractions. Thousands of them, moving in patterns that played havoc with hegemonic targeting systems. Enemy forces responding, Rodriguez reported, excitement creeping into his voice. Their combat AI is attempting to calculate threat patterns. Good luck with that, Winters smiled. The bots' movements were based on old video game patterns, completely illogical to military AI, but instantly recognizable to any human who'd ever played classic arcade games. As the alien forces diverted resources to deal with the swarming bots, Winters initiated Phase 2. The methane lake, superheated by carefully placed mining charges, erupted. Not in a simple explosion. That would have been too predictable. Instead, the volatile liquid created a cascading series of pressure waves, turning Titan's low gravity and dense atmosphere into weapons. Enemy formations are breaking down, Rodriguez called out. Their armor's environmental systems can't compensate for the pressure changes. Major, they're taking off their helmets. Winters nodded grimly. The hegemony's combat protocols were designed to protect against attacks. When their sensors detected the atmospheric changes, their AI defaulted to environmental hazard responses, exactly as planned. Launch the third phase, she ordered. Let's show them why humans are the only species crazy enough to weaponize a moon's weather. The converted mining facility's atmospheric processors roared to life. Suddenly, Titan's methane rain began falling upward, caught in artificially generated gravity wells. The alien troops, many now exposed to the environment, found themselves fighting not just human defenders, but an entire moon that had been turned into a weapon. Enemy forces in full retreat, Rodriguez reported jubilantly. Their command structure is completely compromised. They don't understand what's happening. Of course they don't, Winters replied, watching the chaos through her tactical display. They expected us to fight like soldiers. Instead, we fought like humans, using everything at our disposal, no matter how insane it might seem. As the surviving alien forces fled back to their dropships, Winters allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The hegemony had expected to find primitive warriors. Instead, they'd discovered why humans had survived every catastrophe their world had thrown at them. "Send word to command," she ordered. "Tell them the Titan Gambit worked, and suggest they prepare for what comes next. Because after this, the aliens are about to learn that we're just getting started." General Thomas Wright watched the holographic display from Cirrus Command with barely contained satisfaction. The massive asteroid's interior, hollowed out decades ago under the guise of mining operations, hummed with activity. Kilometer-long assembly lines that had supposedly been dormant for years were now revealing their true purpose. Production efficiency at 112% of projected capacity, reported Colonel Lisa Martinez, his chief of operations. "The hegemony's defeat at Titan has bought us the time we needed. All stealth protocols are disengaged." Wright nodded, watching as another destroyer emerged from the hidden shipyards. What the aliens had dismissed as primitive mining equipment was now producing warships at a rate that would have seemed impossible if humans hadn't spent centuries perfecting the art of rapid industrial mobilization. "Status of Operation Phoenix?" he asked, studying the production metrics scrolling across his neural interface. "All civilian space stations have completed their metamorphosis," Martins replied. "The hegemony still thinks they destroyed our orbital defense platforms. They have no idea that every trading post and research station in the outer system is about to reveal its true nature." The general allowed himself a grim smile. Humanity had learned long ago that the best way to hide a military secret was to put it in plain sight. The aliens had spent months mapping Earth's defensive capabilities, never realizing that what they saw was less than a tenth of humanity's true strength. "Sir," a junior officer called out. "Hegemonic scout ships detected at the edge of the belt. They've noticed our power signature." "Good," Wright replied calmly. "Time for Phase 2. Colonel Martinez, initiate the Lazarus Protocol." Throughout the asteroid belt, hundreds of seemingly dead hulks, destroyed in the initial battles, suddenly powered up. What the hegemony had written off as wreckage was actually a carefully positioned network of automated weapons platforms. "Scout ships are attempting to retreat," the tactical officer reported. Their transmission was cut off mid-broadcast. Wright watched as the trap closed. The aliens had thought they were containing humanity within their own solar system. Instead, they'd given Earth's industry exactly the time it needed to reveal its full potential. "Production nodes 2 through 7 are now online," Martins announced. "Ceres was just the prototype, sir. The entire belt is waking up." On the strategic display, more shipyards revealed themselves. Each asteroid facility was coming alive, each one capable of matching the output of entire hegemonic production worlds. Humanity hadn't just built a defense force. They'd created an industrial engine of war that could outproduce an empire. "Send word to Admiral Hayes," Wright ordered. "Tell her the forges of Mars are hot and Vulcan's children are ready for war." New ships were emerging faster now, their designs incorporating everything learned from the early battles. The hegemony had thought humanity's technology primitive. They were about to learn why you should never judge a species by their apparent level of advancement. "Sir," Martinez interrupted, "we're receiving reports from the Jupiter shipyards. The Dreadnought program is ahead of schedule. First wave of capital ships will be ready within 48 hours. Wright studied the production figures with pride. In 6 months, humanity had accomplished what the hegemony had assumed would take decades. Every defeat, every apparent setback, had been carefully calculated to hide the true scope of human industrial capability. The aliens wanted to see humanity's war machine. He asked rhetorically. Well, now they're going to learn why Earth's historians call our industrial capacity the arsenal of democracy. Throughout the solar system, humanity's hidden production nodes continued to awaken. Each one had been built in secret, disguised as something harmless, waiting for this moment. The hegemony had started this war thinking they faced a primitive species with limited industrial capability. "Send word to all commands," Wright ordered. "Operation Vulcan is now in full effect. It's time to show the galaxy why you never provoke a species that turned industrial warfare into an art form. As another wave of warships emerged from Ceres's hidden docks, Wright allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The real war was about to begin, and humanity was ready to teach the galaxy's oldest empire its newest lesson. Captain Amanda Foster moved silently through the shadows of the hegemony's primary communications hub on Proxima Station, her active camouflage making her nearly invisible. 6 months of preparation had led to this moment, the linchpin of humanity's most ambitious psychological operation. Team positions confirmed, whispered Lieutenant Jack Reynolds through their quantum-encrypted comlink. Beta and Charlie teams are in place. Delta team has control of the secondary power grid. Foster checked her neural interface's countdown timer. In exactly 3 minutes, humanity would demonstrate why information warfare was their specialty. The hegemony had no idea that their most secure facility had been compromised months ago, infiltrated by human operators who had played a long game of deep cover. Status on the data package. She subvocalized, her augmented vocal cords transmitting without sound. Ready for upload, Reynolds replied. Dr. Morris says it's the most comprehensive expose of hegemonic war crimes ever compiled. 600 years of documented atrocities, all ready to broadcast across their own secure networks. Foster reached the central control node, her augmented vision highlighting the quantum security measures that the aliens believed impenetrable. What they didn't know was that humanity had broken their encryption months ago, thanks to a breakthrough in quantum mathematics that they'd kept secret for exactly this purpose. Begin Phase 1, she ordered. Let's show them why Earth wrote the book on information warfare. Throughout the massive station, hidden programs activated. The hegemony's own communication protocols, subtly altered over months by deep-cover human agents, were about to become weapons. Initiating broadcast override, Reynolds reported. Their firewalls are responding exactly as predicted. They have no idea we're using their own security protocols against them. Foster watched through her augmented reality display as the first data packets began streaming through the network. The hegemony had built their empire on carefully controlled information, keeping their subject species isolated and unaware of each other's struggles. That was about to change. First testimonials are broadcasting, Reynolds announced. Footage from the Centaurian genocide is breaking through their sensors. The Rigelian slave revolts are being broadcast on all frequencies. The station's internal alarms remained silent. The beauty of their attack was its subtlety. By the time the hegemony realized what was happening, their own communication network would be spreading the truth faster than they could contain it. Sir, Reynolds's voice carried a note of satisfaction. We're receiving reports of unrest on 12 hegemonic worlds. Their subject species are seeing the uncensored truth for the first time. The riots have begun. Foster allowed herself a grim smile. Initiate Phase 2. Release the tactical packages. This was the true masterstroke. Hidden within the footage of hegemonic atrocities were encrypted military databases, everything from shield frequencies to fleet movements. Every oppressed species in the Empire was about to receive a complete guide to fighting their oppressors. Multiple uprising confirmed, Reynolds reported. The Andromedans have taken 3 orbital platforms. The Pleiades Defense Force is reforming. The hegemony's internal security forces are completely overwhelmed. Send word to Admiral Hayes, Foster ordered. Tell her Operation Truth and Reconciliation is successful. The Empire is about to learn why you never let humans near your information systems. Throughout the facility, more systems were falling under human control. What had seemed like a simple communications hub was becoming the focal point of an empire-wide revolution. The hegemony had thought their greatest strength was their absolute control of information. Instead, it had become their greatest vulnerability. Final package uploading now, Reynolds confirmed. Every species in the Empire will know not only what the hegemony has done, but how to fight back. And more importantly, they'll know that humanity stands ready to support their liberation. Foster watched as the last firewalls fell. The hegemony had started this war thinking they faced a primitive species. Instead, they'd awakened a force that understood that the most powerful weapons weren't ships or guns, but information and truth. "Broadcast complete," Reynolds announced. "The revolution has begun." Foster nodded, watching as reports of uprisings flooded their tactical displays. The hegemony was about to learn another crucial lesson about humanity. Give them a cause worth fighting for, and they'll move mountains, or in this case, shatter an empire. Vice Admiral Derek Martinez stood on the bridge of the Remember the Alamo, humanity's first true dreadnought, hidden in Jupiter's shadow. The massive vessel, 3 times larger than anything the hegemony had ever encountered, represented everything humanity had kept hidden until this moment. Hegemonic Reserve Fleet has taken the bait, Lieutenant Kate Anderson reported from her quantum warfare station. 117 capital ships, moving exactly as predicted. They think they've found our weak point. Martinez nodded, watching the tactical display as the largest alien fleet ever assembled moved toward Earth. The hegemony, reeling from internal rebellions and military defeats, had committed everything to this final push. It was exactly what humanity had been waiting for. "Status of Operation Spider's Web?" he asked, his cybernetic eye scanning through layers of tactical data. "All quantum mines are in position," Anderson replied. "The entire corridor between Mars and Earth is seeded. They have no idea they're flying into the largest trap ever constructed in human military history." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. After months of apparent defeats and strategic retreats, humanity had convinced the hegemony that Earth's defenses were finally weakening. The aliens had taken the bait, committing their entire reserve fleet to what they thought would be a decisive blow. "Signal Admiral Hayes," Martinez ordered. "Tell her the web is ready. Time to show them why humanity wrote the book on strategic deception." The hegemonic fleet moved with precision, their formation perfect according to their tactical doctrine. They had no way of knowing that every move they made had been predicted and planned for months in advance. "Enemy fleet reaching optimal position," Anderson announced. "Quantum grid is powered and ready, waiting for your command, sir." Martinez took a moment to appreciate the scale of what they were about to attempt. The largest gravitational trap ever created, powered by the combined energy of 36 hidden antimatter reactors. The technology had existed for decades, disguised as experimental power plants that the hegemony had dismissed as primitive attempts at fusion power. "Execute Operation Spider's Web," he commanded. "Let's remind them why humans are the galaxy's apex predators." The trap was sprung in stages. First, the quantum mines activated, creating a web of gravitational distortions that trapped the hegemonic ships in place. Their much-vaunted drives, capable of crossing light years, were suddenly useless in the face of human ingenuity. "Enemy fleet is immobilized," Anderson reported, her voice taut with controlled excitement. "Their shields are failing under the gravitational stress. They're completely vulnerable." "Signal all commands," Martinez ordered. "Execute final phase. Show them what humanity has been holding in reserve." From Jupiter's shadow, the true might of Earth's fleet emerged. Not the seemingly primitive ships the hegemony had faced before, but humanity's real war machines. Vessels powered by technologies that had been kept hidden for precisely this moment. "All ships reporting ready," Anderson announced. "The hegemony, sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. They're requesting terms of surrender." Martinez studied the tactical display, where the pride of an alien empire lay trapped and helpless. The hegemony had started this war thinking they faced a primitive species. Instead, they'd awakened a giant that had spent its entire history preparing for moments exactly like this. "Signal Admiral Hayes," he ordered. "Tell her Operation Checkmate is complete. Earth's final defense line can stand down. And inform the hegemonic commander that we will accept nothing less than unconditional surrender." Throughout the solar system, humanity's hidden forces revealed themselves. The hegemony had never understood that what they thought was Earth's full military might was less than 1/10 of what humanity had kept in reserve. "Sir," Anderson reported. "We're receiving surrender signals from 80% of the enemy fleet. The others are about to learn why humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology. Martine, it's finished. It's our ability to plan for every contingency." As the Remember the Alamo moved into position to accept the enemy's surrender, Martinez allowed himself a moment of pride. The hegemony had wanted to teach humanity a lesson. Instead, they'd learned one themselves. Never underestimate a species that had turned warfare into a science. President Laura Richardson stood before the newly formed Galactic Council, the marble halls of the former hegemonic palace now serving a different purpose. 6 months after humanity's victory, representatives from 100 formerly enslaved species filled the chamber, each now free to determine their own destiny. "The war is over," she began, her voice carrying through the vast chamber. "But the real work of peace is just beginning." Behind her, Admiral Hayes and the other architects of humanity's victory stood in dress uniforms. They weren't there as conquerors, but as guardians of a new order, one built on cooperation rather than subjugation. "The Terran Diplomatic Corps stands ready to assist any world requesting aid in rebuilding," Richardson continued. "We offer our technology, our resources, and our experience freely. Because unlike the hegemony, we understand that true strength comes not from dominance, but from lifting others up." In the audience, former hegemonic officials sat alongside the representatives of species they had once oppressed. The change in power had been absolute, but humanity's response had surprised everyone. No executions, no revenge. Instead, Earth had proposed a system of restorative justice that focused on healing rather than punishment. "We could have destroyed the hegemony completely," Richardson acknowledged, addressing the elephant in the room. "We had the power. We had the justification. But humanity learned long ago that victory without wisdom is just another form of defeat." The holoprojectors activated, showing the massive reconstruction efforts already underway across former hegemonic space. Orbital shipyards, once dedicated to building weapons, now produced humanitarian vessels. Military installations were being converted into medical centers and educational facilities. Some asked why we spent 6 months preparing instead of striking immediately when we discovered the hegemony's plans, she continued. The answer is simple. We wanted to be ready not just for war, but for peace. Because anyone can destroy an empire. The real challenge is building something better in its place. Ambassador Tilara of the Pleiades Confederation rose to speak. "And what guarantees do we have that Earth won't simply become the new hegemony? Power corrupts, as humans themselves say." Richardson smiled. "That's exactly why we insisted on this council structure. Earth holds no special status here. We have one vote like everyone else. Our role isn't to rule, but to serve as guardians while other species rebuild." The chamber erupted in discussion. This was unprecedented in galactic history. A species achieving total military victory, only to voluntarily limit its own power. "The Terran Defense Force will remain active," Admiral Hayes added, stepping forward. "Not to dominate, but to protect. Any member world can request assistance against aggression. But we operate only with the Council's approval, under strict oversight." Former Supreme Commander Vex Thor, now serving as the representative of the reformed hegemonic worlds, slowly stood. The chamber fell silent. "When we first encountered humans," he began, mandibles clicking softly, "we thought them primitive, dangerous. We were half right. They are dangerous, but only to those who threaten peace. My people learned this lesson at great cost. We also learned something else. True civilization isn't measured by military might or technological advancement, but by how you treat others." President Richardson nodded in acknowledgement. "The stars are vast, and we are all still learning. The hegemony's greatest mistake wasn't challenging Earth. It was believing that domination was the only path to unity. We offer a different way." As the session concluded, representatives from 100 worlds lined up to sign the Galactic Charter. Each signature represented not just a commitment to peace, but a lesson learned. That humanity's greatest strength wasn't their ability to wage war, but their capacity to forge peace from the ashes of conflict. 100 civilizations, Hayes mused quietly to Richardson, all working together instead of fighting. Was this your plan all along? The president watched as former enemies became allies, as ancient rivalries gave way to new partnerships. No, she replied with a smile. This is better than any plan. This is humanity's true victory, not defeating an empire, but helping build a galaxy where empires are no longer necessary.